Welcome back. Still on matters power. Johannesburg Municipal Power, City Power, has done an about turn and has now agreed to implement load shedding among its customers. On Sunday, City Power refused to go ahead with load shedding because it believed a new deal with a private power station should supply enough additional electricity to shield it from stage 2 load shedding. However, City Power today agreed to load shedding to save the national grid from total collapse. We're joined now by Maluleke, who's the acting CEO of City Power. Very good evening to you, and thank you so much for speaking to us. Now, tell us about this about term. Were you strong-armed, or do you have a rethink of your initial stance?
Good evening, and evening to the viewers. The statement U10, I think I need to correct that one first, because there is a formal process that is still underway between Eskom and City Power. And the meetings are happening for us to find a way how we can avert load shedding. Initially, I know it was reported we are going the court route, but after engagements between us and Eskom, we decided to go through a formal process which includes technical teams that are going to...
But is it incorrect to say on Sunday you said that you are not going to load shed your customers because you believe that the deal you struck with Calvin Power to get an additional 220 megawatts in electricity should shield your customers from stage 1 and stage 2 load shedding? Did you not say that?
The statement is correct, because we are adding 220 megawatts into the grid. And unfortunately, after engagements with Eskom that were initially started with a letter that we sent to Eskom on the 13th of October, then we had to get a response from Eskom, where in that process, for us to get to that stage where we avert the load shedding, we have to then go through the formal NERSA regulation processes, and also for our technical teams to go through that process.
And I'm not being combative about this, but I just think we just also need to make it clear. To say it's not an about turn then is disingenuous, because either you are overly optimistic, because you now say Eskom presented a valid case why the city should comply and assist in their capacity changes or other challenges which forces them to load shed. So meaning you are now taking a different position to one that you took earlier. So perhaps if you're able to share with us as a nation why you decided that this case was convincing, because one would have thought you would have been naturally inclined in the national interest when Eskom said, please load shed.
Okay, if you are following the Eskom interviews as well from the Chief Operating Officer of Eskom, you will see that the severity of the load shedding since the power purchase agreement was signed has been aggravated. So there has been additional power plant losses from the Eskom side. And now with the additional power, unfortunately, there is more severe or negative impact from the Eskom's generation side. And I think that maybe should be taken up with the Eskom executive team in terms of the system constraints from a national perspective. But from City Power or COJ perspective, we are pushing for averting load shedding, because with the 220 megawatts, we are formally engaging on a process how we can be exempted or partially exempted. But also at the same time, tomorrow with the executive mayor of Johannesburg, we are also launching the energy mix strategy, which then brings in additional capacity.
Okay, so what you're saying, Ms. Maluleke, is that ideally you would like to not load shed your customers, but you may have to, because by your own admission, you are saying that you are now alive to the constraints which Eskom is under, and you feel you have a responsibility to do so. Now, what Eskom was saying in previous interviews that you've mentioned now is, for instance, that the power shortage is due to a fault on a feed water pump. Is there a way in which you can assist in this beyond load shedding, or it's just those other alternatives that you're talking about?
Yes, so our self-generation strategy or the energy mix is for that purpose. It's an objective to relieve the national grid, but specifically for the residents of Johannesburg. And hence the process that we're embarking on for exemption, which follows the NERSA process and also follows a technical process with Eskom, will then eventually avert the load shedding for residents of Johannesburg. Okay. Unfortunately, as we're having our plans in place, the aggravated situation from the Eskom supply side unfortunately kicked in that process, and hence the misunderstanding of the process. But we are following a formal process which then sticks to our initial objective that we do not ideally want to see the residents of Johannesburg being load shed.
Would this include more power purchase agreements?
Excuse me?
Would this include more purchase
additional
power? Yes.
Yes, definitely. So tomorrow's launch is going to speak to other alternative energy plans which seek to increase the generation capacity. And even with that additional generation capacity, we still need to follow that technical process and compliance process. So it's a journey for us.
All right. Thank you very much for speaking to us. Nancy Maluleke is acting CEO at City Power.